6:30, so we'll get started. As a preliminary matter, this is Peter Mulcahy, acting chair for the evening. I'm going to confirm that all members and staff are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Patrick Fullen.
Here.
Ann Ruffalo.
I'm here.
Matt Armenti.
Here.
Kevin Nisbet.
Here.
And staff, same thing. When I call your name, please respond. Bernie Cahill's on the list. Is he here? Probably not, right?
No,
Okay.
That's an old one.
Rowan McAllister
Present.
and Kristen Rapolo.
Present.
Great. So good evening. The open meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely this evening, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus tonight because of the snow. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Zoning Board of Appeals is convening by teleconference and by video conference on Google Hangouts, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Before we get to the first agenda item, I'll just go over some ground rules. Oh, also apologize in advance. My cat will almost certainly be joining us this evening as well. It is an open meeting. Before we turn to the first agenda item, the ground rules, I will introduce each board member or staff member who has the lead role for a particular item or the guest or speaker associated with the item on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members first and then to staff members, inviting each by name to provide any comments or questions. I will then call upon the members to offer a motion and then for a second. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute and unmute your phone by pressing *6 or mute your computer when you are not speaking so as not to trigger your camera feed or the background noise. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, we'll call on each name and afford 3 minutes for any comments. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So that's it for the sort of opening remarks. So now turning to the agenda, which are bills. Looks like we have 2 bills this evening, one from Graves Engineering for $1,443 for the Point at Hills Farm peer review fees, and one for $98.45 for the Community Advocate for January 23rd, 2023 legal notices. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? We'll go to the line. Patrick?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
And Peter, aye. Okay. Now we go to the first item on our agenda. Just switch papers here. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is was actually continued to the February 27, 2023 meeting. It's 409 South Street, Office Research, Greystar Development East LLC, a comprehensive permit under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, to permit the construction of a 196-unit age-restricted apartment community. Do we have to vote on continuance, Rowan, or no?
Yes, let's do it. I believe the last motion made was to continue to this meeting. So yes, please vote to approve the continuation request.
Okay, do I have a motion to continue this hearing to February 27, 2023 at 6:30 p.m.?
Motion to continue until February 27th, 2023, 6:30 p.m.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Well, We'll go down the line. Mr. Fullen,
Aye.
Ms. Ruffalo,
Aye.
Mr. Nisbet,
Aye.
Mr. Armenti,
Aye.
and Mr. Mulcahy, aye. So moved. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 7 Ira Avenue in the Residence B2 District. Steve Alvarez, 107 Harrington Farms Way, Shrewsbury, Mass. For a variance to Section 4, Section 7, and Section 9, to construct an addition to change from a single family to a 2-family with non-conforming setbacks and lot area. Can you step forward and identify yourself, name and address for the meeting?
My name is Steve Alvarez. I live at 107 Harrington Farms Way in Shrewsbury.
And what do you have for us tonight?
So what I have is this appeal. By the way, thank you everyone for making it to the meeting given the weather. Virtual reality, what a great thing, huh? So I have this is a modest addition to a home to turn it into a 2-family. The unfortunate situation with this particular lot is the shape of the lot, where the house is located on the lot. And so I guess given the subdivision that they made at some point, the existing the existing dwelling is actually non-conforming. So anything we attach to it is also going to be non-conforming. So hence why we've put together this appeal. We have looked at the different parts of the lot where we could do something, and the current dwelling does not have a layout and space inside of it to do anything within the current footprint of the dwelling. Trying to restructure the inside of that dwelling to make it a 2-family becomes, from a structural point of view, becomes a very expensive proposition for the owner. So it creates a financial hardship for the owner. The existing topography, it actually lends itself to have this addition attached to only one side. It would be the western half of the western side of the house. Good news there, it's that it's actually pretty flat, so that helps a little bit. But in essence, it does not, if we put it there, it does not further encroach in the setbacks that the existing dwelling already provides, has. And those are listed in the application. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're trying to figure out and asking you folks to, consider our appeal for setback relief. The existing dwelling has a set of setbacks, and the new addition will not encroach any further into those setbacks as it's currently laid out. So we're trying to do what we can to not create additional, I'm going to call it stress on the property lines. So if one of the main reasons is to create this 2-family situation is the owner's son is going to college locally, so they want to create their own space for him and maybe a roommate in this particular addition, trying to keep separation between the mom, dad, and the son. So while attending to school, obviously the room and board funding will be put towards the expenses of putting this addition onto the house. And if it turns out that after college the son decides to move to California or wherever, the owners will still need to have a financial income or income into the property to be able to afford to put all of this together. So hence that's part of the conversation that I like to have with you folks relative to rationale behind putting this addition on the house and where we want to put it. In terms of the addition, what the owners are looking to, they're seeking to do is maintain the look and feel of the general area and the houses around them. There's some fairly sizable houses actually in the adjacent lots across the street that, this addition would not be out of place compared to the other houses in the neighborhood. So we're not looking to create something that unnecessarily disrupts the neighborhood, the look and feel of the neighborhood. So if this variance is granted, the addition will not further encroach into the existing conditions. As I said before, I had actually laid out a table with the existing conditions and the proposed addition, and you can see that, for example, the front yard setback is 30 feet, and the current condition says 2.1 foot setback from the front door. Essentially, you step out the front door and you're sitting on somebody else's land. So what we're looking to do is that front setback now becomes something in the neighborhood of 19.7 feet away from that lot line. And the same thing with the side yard. That side yard, the requirements for 30 feet, and the existing conditions is 120, and the proposed addition will bring it to 90. So it's essentially, it's still well within the setback on the western side of the property. I guess at this point, I'd like to ask for comments, questions, clarifications.
Sure, thank you for that. First, I'll ask Ms. McAllister, do you have anything to add for the staff?
Just to maybe clarify, right, this is a variance for both setbacks and lot area.
Yes.
As lot area increases, required minimum lot area increases as the two-family use is applied. So just to highlight that as well.
And just to sort of clarify or emphasize, the use is allowed by right. That's not an issue here. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, that it is allowed by special permit through the planning board, which this applicant would have to seek following the determination from the board.
Okay, but not before us. Got it. Okay. Now I'll turn to the board. Mr. Fullen, comments?
No, I have no comments on that. I think that was well explained. No problem.
Mr. Ruffalo?
Yeah, this looks great. I have no comments or concerns.
Mr. Nisbet?
No comments either. I mean, it doesn't decrease on setbacks, and it's about pretty much all you can do with what you got. So thank you, and thank you for providing elevations as well. I enjoyed those.
Thank you.
Mr. Armenti?
No comment.
Okay. And for myself, I'd just add, for a variance, you need a hardship. And I think I drove by, and obviously I think topography is a serious issue. You're kind of hemmed in by that steep hill. And as you said, the existing structures being where they are. So I think criteria for variance are met. If there's nothing further from the board, I'd ask members of the public, if you're on Google Hangouts, you can use the little hand raise button. And then I don't know what we do from there. Maybe Rowan can be, Ms. McAllister can help me with that. But speak now if you're, or raise your hand now if you're interested in commenting.
Also, just
right.
to mention that those on the phone can hit *6 as well to unmute.
All right, hearing no takers, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Can we do these by voice vote, or should we do the roll call?
Just roll call them all for me, okay?
All right, can't hurt.
Thank
So all in favor, or Mr. Fullen, how do you vote? This is for closing the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Ruffalo?
Aye, yeah, close it.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Nisbet?
Aye.
Mr. Armenti?
Aye.
And Mr. Mulcahy, aye. The public hearing is closed. Any discussion from the board? I don't have
No,
anything to
I
add.
don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right.
I
Then
just
do
want to
I-
ask a question.
Sure.
Is everybody's computer here kind of going in and out, like getting a lot of pauses in it, or is that just me?
Might be just you.
All right.
Not the answer you want to hear, probably.
Yeah, Patrick,
No.
if it gets really bad, you can call in and have audio on your phone that might be less choppy.
Okay.
If it gets bad, you can unmute and I'll help you with that. All right.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the variance for 7 Ira Avenue under section 6, section 7, and section 9 due to hardship.
Or section 4?
Oh, section 4, I'm sorry.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. Mr. Fullen,
Aye.
Ms. Ruffalo,
Aye.
Mr. Nisbet,
Aye.
Mr. Armenti,
Aye.
and Mr. Mulcahy, aye. So moved. Thank you very much, Mr. Alvarez, for your presentation. You're all set.
Thank you very much for your time and your votes. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next public hearing for 6:30 p.m. is 810 Boston Turnpike in the Limited Industrial District, Scrappy Pet Enterprises Incorporated at 11 Kent Drive, Shrewsbury. It's an appeal of the decision of the building inspector to require a special permit from the planning board to utilize parking spaces at 820 Boston Turnpike for a business use. Could the applicant come forward?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Mark Donahue from Fletcher Tilton.
Hi, Mr. Donahue. What do you have for us?
So as this board is probably familiar, sometimes when reasonable people reasonably disagree, you get called in to basically be the arbiter of who's closer to being right than any fashion. And that's where we are this evening. This relates to parking. To go backwards a little bit, the board might remember that we were before your board in the fall with regard to a use variance for Scrappy Pet Enterprises at 810 Boston Turnpike. It's a dog obedience or dog training program in about 4,100 square feet of that commercial multi-tenant building at 810. At that time, we showed you a plan that showed that the required parking was being provided in conjunction with the property at 820 Boston Turnpike, which is owned by the same party, Shrewsbury Central Park Associates. What that plan showed is that there were a total of 133 parking spaces, and based upon the uses, including the anticipated use of Scrappy Pet, there was a requirement under the Shrewsbury zoning bylaw of 114 spaces. The combined is necessary to meet the number because 810 by itself within its boundaries doesn't have enough. So we looked at the bylaw, a specific section, and it's referred to in our application in Mr. McGoldrick's email or memo, section Roman numeral 7D3A5, which deals with the location of parking. And as we read it, basically, in order to provide the necessary parking to meet the bylaw for any use, a property owner, an applicant either has to provide that parking on the same lot as the use, has to have an arrangement with a contiguous property owner to provide the required parking on that lot, or get a special permit from the planning board to use remote parking, which has some limitations on it. We see the language about being contiguous, the two lots contiguous, as 4 square here. The lots share a property line. They share a common access drive. They are contiguous in every fashion. They are, as I indicated, owned by the same owner. And therefore, the language that says that you can 2 or more businesses may jointly provide the required spaces on 1 or more of their lots contiguous to each other is applicable. There's disagreement over that, and we're asking you to resolve that. Mr. McGoldrick's memo to you, which we saw on Friday, suggests that these lots are not contiguous because contiguous was intended to be that the parking areas were contiguous and not divided by an access drive or anything else. I'd suggest to you that from a planning perspective, that's somewhat inconsistent with the whole concept of shared parking. Shared parking is encouraged, in fact, in many communities, as is shared access off of major roadways, to pull it together and have parking used as opposed to duplicating parking where it's not necessary. It's used in any number of scenarios where you have a use that requires parking, but it's contiguous to another. Could be an out parcel of a retail center or something of that nature. But the key is that they are contiguous lots. They are next to each other. They're not remote in any fashion, which is when you need the planning board approval. And so while we respect Ms. Sheehan's opinion, we respectfully disagree here and ask you to affirm the appeal and overturn the determination of the building inspector. Suzanne Spitzer, who's the proposed operator of Scrappy Pets, I believe is online. And we'd be glad to answer any particular questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Donahue. Ms. McAllister or Ms. Sheehan, anything to add?
I'll let Ms. Sheehan take it.
Sure, I would be glad to answer any specific questions that the board has. But the memo that you did receive through the planning department is a very good summary as to where we stand right now. And as Attorney Donahue says, we are just agreeing to disagree. One thing I will say about 810, 820 Boston Turnpike is that I've been working with Cutler Management for many, many years. And as Cutler Management has made me aware, is that they're getting different types of uses proposed for the property so that they can fill their tenant spaces. What I've let them know is that if this is the way overall that the property would like to go to entertain different types of tenant spaces that are allowed outside of the limited industrial district, they really should take a look at changing the zoning through the process that we have through the town. You can change the zoning and actually take a look at reviewing their site to make sure that it lends itself more to opening up to the public, because limited industrial sites are not really intended for the public in the way that, you know, some of the tenants now that are filling these tenant spaces will be using it. The objective is to get a safe site. The objective is to get an accurate plot plan, and the planning board has more expertise in reviewing the site to make sure that maybe different elements for people who may be visiting the site and parking at 820 and going to 810 can cross carefully and safely from one site to the other, given that we have that access drive and given that people do pull off of Route 9 fairly quick, fairly fast, you know, as you're turning into the site. So, I can answer any questions, but I think you are aware of kind of both of our concerns. Thank you.
And Mr. Donahue, any responses to any of that, or?
Well, just briefly, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity. Some of the safety issues that Ms. Sheehan touched on were actually talked about during the course of the use variance a few months ago with your board. And the board did not at that time find it necessary to impose any kind of conditions or the like. I'd remind you that the use is, as I said, dog training, dog obedience. As Ms. Spitzer testified at the board meeting in October, her maximum is about 10 clients per hour. So it doesn't drive a lot of traffic, and there is a big parking area in front. Some of the concerns I think Ms. Sheehan may have is due to the particular use there. Religious organization is using part of the building, and they may be driving traffic much more than our clients would in any fashion. I think the real question is, what's the bylaw say? What's the reasonable reading of the bylaw? And not necessarily what, you know, could otherwise be created as a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'll go to the board. I'm going to exercise chair prerogative actually and go first. I just have a quick question for Mr. Donahue. So is it your reading is basically that list of 3 options is disjunctive? Is that the idea? So it can be that they're contiguous, and if they are contiguous, that's all you need. Or you can go, or then you have to go to the planning board to get a special permit. Is that the sort of crux of the disagreement?
Yes, it is. But I think that accurately reflects my my reading of this section of the bylaw as to how one comports to meet the requirement of location of your parking.
Okay. And I also have a question for Ms. Sheehan. Do we, is the main issue for the, whether or not they're contiguous, the fact of the driveway? Is that the primary issue, or do we have a sort of a bigger difference of opinion in terms of what the bylaw requires?
Right, so, so it is the driveway and the access with the traffic not being able to slow down. There isn't a deceleration lane, the traffic being able to slow down and using that access that goes between the two lots. So when, as I was saying before, so when someone is going to park at 820 and go over to 810, walking in that area is a concern, and that driveway access does, although I don't know exactly where the property line is, that driveway access is between the two properties where people would park.
Yeah, thank you, that's helpful. I'll go down the line now. Mr. Fullen.
I have nothing to add.
Ms. Ruffalo?
I'll defer to the others and come back at the end.
No problem. Mr. Nisbet?
So I feel like this particular tenant is still stuck in between a site that's kind of in flex, or it's starting to transition into a different use than what it's intended for now. And I feel like they're kind of suffering the unintended consequences for the building owners changing uses. And I'm also a little confused. I don't know if Patty or if Rowan, if you guys can help me understand why this is now coming back to us again. I feel like this was kind of already sorted before. Was this just because it was zoning, and now because they've gone to planning, that it's now triggering something for us to review?
Ms. McAllister, machine?
Patty,
So, so what I could explain is that when the application was before you, it was specifically for the use on the property to allow a use that is not allowed in the limited industrial district to go into this location. What was expected is that after that, because we do have, as Mr. Donahue said, is we do have a temple use that is at 810 Boston Turnpike and went to the planning board for that review. And the use of the temple, the use of the pet business, it does draw more users to the property than what we see in limited industrial use. This property has been subject now to many use variances. The reason why the temple wasn't before you is because it was under the Dover Amendment and was exempt. Otherwise, that would have been before you. So we have the tenant space of Pump It Up that or Jump Nation that is there by a use variance. So we now have a use variance granted for this new tenant space, and we have a temple that's there under the Dover Amendment. These are places of assembly or business uses that is not allowed in the limited industrial district. So that is why the application was before you before, and it was expected that next steps would be taken to go to the planning board. But as the applicant is stating, just reading the section of the bylaw that's making the case that it's not applicable, and I'm reviewing it with the planning department and say that it is applicable for many reasons.
Okay, that's certainly helpful. I mean, I still don't feel any differently than I do from a few months ago. The sites are next to each other. It seems like the same property owners. If I'm not mistaken, we conditioned a little striped crosswalk that is set back into both sites. I'm not sure the exact distance, but it looks like maybe a minimum 100 feet. And also there is, I know cars are coming right off of Route 9, but there is a third lane that is used pretty much only for this site. It comes up after all the car dealerships, the Sativa building that's there, and then disappears afterwards before you get to Commons Drive. So I don't think cars are coming off as quick. I know it still is Route 9 and people do drive fast, but it's still not a concern for me. That's all I have for comments for now.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Nisbet. Mr. Armenti?
I'll just say I've read the bylaw multiple times. I do believe that this applicant meets the exception that's listed under section 7(3)(a)(5). So I would have nothing more to add at this time.
Okay, back to Ms. Ruffalo.
Sure. So I have a question in the memo, the staff memo, which points out concerns about a parking plan not being accurate. I see that there's another parking plan. Is that an updated parking plan that brings it more into expectations from the zoning enforcement officer's perspective?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if that's to me. It is not an updated plan. It's the plan that we submitted to you originally. I did, though, ask Thompson Liston to do a site investigation with the idea that we had been informed that there was some concern that the plan did not depict the existing conditions appropriately. They tell me that the only difference that they noted in a physical inspection was that a loading area at 820 Boston Turnpike had not been noted on their plan, and they could certainly add it. There are, and I think it's in the staff memo also, there are some vehicles that are parked there or stored there. I guess question of, I don't know how often they move. They've got a particular logo on them, so they're referred to as the Red Bull vehicles. I have talked with Cutler Management since being told about that. They have confirmed the tenant does not have rights to park overnight in the lot. And so if that's a concern of a zoning violation, we can take care of that elsewhere, but they're not eliminated from it. And I do point out that the excess parking between the plan and the need is 19 spaces. So I don't think that's it. I'm not sure what else the concern was about some inconsistency, but that's all I can tell you.
Okay, thanks. And so if Ms. Sheehan could weigh in on that question, the concerns about the parking plan not being accurate.
Right, so as long as Red Bull has been on that site at 820 Boston Turnpike, they have parked their vehicles in certain parking spaces. And if you go by at different times, there's many of them. It wasn't a concern before because they were the only, or there's only 2 tenants at that site on that location at 820. However, this is new information that that Red Bull is not allowed to park outside. And I think that would be news to them. So what happens for consistent enforcement is that if a business has company vehicles that need to park on the site when they're not in use, obviously those parking spaces are not available to the public and they have to be accounted for on the site plan. So that was one of the comments. Also, I do intend to talk with Thompson Liston and get a clarification on some parking spaces. Parking spaces are not dimensioned, and some of the parking spaces go into the driveway that allows you to go from the rear of 810 Boston Turnpike out to the driveway access that may not be usable spaces. So those are a couple of the concerns. So the plan is the same that was before the planning board, but again, the staff has accepted some of these plans with the intention that there would be updates as the project moves along, and certainly by the time the site plan comes to the building inspector's office for the building permit, because the building code requires that an accurate site plan be submitted under Chapter 1 of the building code. So that's kind of some of the history of reviewing the site plan.
Well, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Donahue, just quickly, if I can jump in just before we get too far into this, I just want to clarify the site plan issue. Is that a separate issue from the special permit issue? In other words,
yes,
is that
it should be a separate issue, and we can address that separately. Yes.
okay? And so from the planning from your perspective, Ms. Sheehan, from the planning department's perspective, do we need an up-to-date plan in order to reach the question of whether or not a special permit is necessary or not?
No, you don't.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Mr. Donahue, do you have anything to add?
No, I'll waive my time on the floor to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. I'll come back to myself very briefly. I tend to, well, never mind. I guess we'll close public, or first we'll reach public comment and then we can come back to the board. So this is a public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to be heard, please raise your hand there or press *6. All right, hearing no takers, I guess we can close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, start with Mr. Fullen,
Aye.
Ms. Ruffalo,
Aye.
Mr. Nisbet,
Aye.
Mr. Armenti,
Aye.
Mr. Mulcahy, aye. Motion passes. The public hearing is closed. So now discussion from the board. Let's go in that same order. Mr. Fullen.
I have nothing to add.
Ms. Ruffalo.
I am concerned about the parking, but I think that could be taken care of through the planning board. So I have no other concerns in that.
Mr. Nisbet,
I have no further comment.
Mr. Armenti.
I have nothing to add.
As for myself, I'm curious if anybody has any reaction to this. I think the question primarily that's before us is the interpretation of the bylaw. And where I'm kind of leaning as to whether or not the two parcels are contiguous is they're certainly next to each other. The fact that they are separated by a driveway, I'm not sure makes them not contiguous. If it was, let's say, instead of a driveway, one large parking lot, I don't know that we would say that would make them not contiguous either. The fact that vehicles are passing. That said, I very much agree with the planning department's safety concerns about the driveway and about sharing the parking between the two lots. I'm just not sure that the safety concerns overrule whether or not we think the parcels are contiguous, and I think they are. So curious if anybody has an opinion on that. Otherwise, we can.
I think safety should be the number one concern.
You're muted, Peter.
Sorry, if no one has anything else to add, I'll entertain motions. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, may I just remind the board that you do have some draft motions prepared in your folder, simply clarifying what a motion to sustain or reverse the determination of the building inspector may mean. I would encourage the board members to take a look at that.
I would do it, but chairs aren't allowed to make motions.
Right. Does it matter if I read A or B?
I'd like to make,
Mr. Fullen.
You got it, Pat?
I'd like to make a motion to sustain the determination of the building inspector that a special permit for section 7(d) 3A 5 for the use of parking located at 820 Boston Turnpike is required.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. For a vote, Mr. Fullen,
Aye.
Ms. Ruffalo,
Aye.
Mr. Nisbet,
Aye.
Mr. Armenti,
No.
and myself a nay. However, it is a majority vote, and that's what's required to pass. So a special permit would be required. The determination of the building inspector is sustained. That brings that hearing to a close. Thank you, Ms. Sheehan. Thank you, Mr. Donahue.
Thank you.
I'm just chattering away with my mute on. That is the end of our public hearings. So we do have new business, and that is to review the Point at Hills Farm final plans. Could a representative from Wind Development please present them? And
Sure.
identify yourself, name and address if you could.
Good evening, everyone. Rami Schneider here with Wind Development. Glad to be in front of you guys tonight. And with me, I have Liz Clark with Beals and Thomas. Rowan, is Liz able to join?
I'm here.
Oh, perfect. So just a quick update. We were notified of our low-income housing tax credit funding end of last year, and we are working through the closing process with the seller and also with the Department of Housing, as well as our tax credit equity syndicators and construction debt lenders. With that, we are here in front of you guys tonight before we file for building permit as part of the final plan reviews pursuant to the comprehensive permit. And with that, I know that there's been some back and forth with the town's peer reviewer, and I believe that all of their comments and questions were addressed, and we're here to answer any additional questions that the board may have.
Okay, staff, do you have anything to add?
Just to kind of illustrates that as staff, I solicited comments from department heads in town, assembled a comment letter that's in your file, separate from that of our peer reviewer. The applicant or Wind Development has addressed all those comments in the letter, as well as the GEI letter as they reference. So staff at this time does not feel that there's any outstanding comments, but I would be happy to go through the material in your folders if it would be helpful to illustrate the back and forth that occurred.
Okay. So this is actually not a public hearing. Does the board have any questions or comments, or would the board, like Ms. McAllister, to run through the items? No takers. All right. In that case, can I get a motion to approve the final plans for the Point at Hills Farm dated October 14, 2022, and revised to January 12, 2023, and as prepared by Beals and Thomas?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Fullen,
Aye.
Ms. Ruffalo,
Aye.
Mr. Nisbet,
Aye.
Mr. Armenti,
Aye.
and Mr. Mulcahy, aye. So moved. All right.
Great. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So I think that concludes our business for the evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm not roll calling this one. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, very good. Thanks all. Have a good night. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Rowan, can you stay there for a second?
Yes.
So,